I let a restaurant go to hell on a busy Saturday night, and it kickstarted my career. This was when I was 18. I'm 34 now, so 2004 to 2005. Think pre-iPhone, but cell phones like the Nokia 3310 exist, which I had one because my parents wanted to make sure I always could be contacted. I worked at bar chain restaurant for 6 months. Let's call it C. It was a completely new store. When we opened, we were the only building for 8 blocks, except for the sister restaurant next door that was part of the same investment group as C. It was a decent upper-middle-class white neighborhood, so we'd get lots of people in the door. I was originally hired as to-go, but I was trained up in almost everything in the restaurant, and I frequently filled shifts, and I got the most hours for it. It was the worst job I ever had, and still is. After getting shifted around to different homes, to-go, QA, host, sometimes server, I eventually ended up in bus, cleaning tables. They promised they would move me off of bus once we had bussers, but as we'll find out later, that day never came. The main reason this happened is that we ran out of bussers. They tried hiring bussers at a rapid rate, but it didn't work. The average survival rate for a busser was 2 weeks, including training time. Eventually, our reputation of chewing out bussers made its rounds. No one would even show up for interviews for the job. See, at C, a pecking order had been established. At the top, you had the managers, then it was the servers, then it was the bar servers, restaurant servers, etc. Guess what was at the bottom? That's right, bussers. Anytime I spoke up about how people needed to pre-bus their tables, people scoffed and said I should just do my job. I explained how I could clear an entire restaurant by myself if everyone pre-bussed their tables, 30 seconds per table versus 8 minutes per table. Deaf ears. So I have to explain about why there's a huge time differential between a pre-bus table and a total bus table. If the servers took every plate off the table, even if the table was grody, I could wipe it into my bucket, clean up a few things, wipe off the seat, reset the center of the table, and move on to the next table. I'd be in and out in 30 seconds and on to the next table. However, if I had to total bus a table, I'd have to take all of the plates, organize everything on the tab. Time varied depending on the number of people at the table. 2 minutes for a 2-top, 5 minutes for a 4-top, etc. If a table had ordered lots of drinks, multiple fajitas, each fajita meal contained no less than 6 dishes, and/or had been particularly unsanitary about their eating practices, unruly kids usually, you could add up to 3 minutes per table. This also compounds that I had to go back to the kitchen and sort through all of the plates, cups, etc. Well, 2 months into my, we're going to move you off of busing once we find bussers, it's a busy Saturday night. I'm talking 1 hour wait at 6:30 p.m. Half the tables are currently dirty, and I'm working my ass off, but each table takes about 5 minutes because no one is pre-bussing tables. I'm told the priority is the restaurant, so I had to tell the bar waiters that they probably wouldn't be bussed at all because it would be so busy. They were not having that, and the on-shift AM, assistant manager, told me I should do my job, but I should still prioritize the restaurant, not the bar. Whatever. I'm constantly telling servers to pre-bus their tables, only to be ignored. It was a particularly bad night, so I asked if the dishwashers could help me out when I brought back my tabs instead of organizing everything myself. They were nice, so they agreed, and it was a decent system. Cut out 2-3 minutes per table. It was still pretty hell with lots of people wanting food. It still didn't help that I had to go back to the kitchen every time there was a full bus table. Enter Karen, queen of the bar server bitches. Remember that pecking order I mentioned? Yeah, she was the queen of the server order. She was one of the ones that constantly berated me for my job performance, despite the fact that I did more than almost anyone else in the restaurant. She made my last 2 months a living hell, constantly telling me I didn't do a good job, that she had to wait for me too long, etc. I constantly told the AMs and manager about the disrespect I received, and they said I should just man up. She never got a single write-up. One particularly busy Saturday night, Karen was a server in the bar side, which meant she wasn't in the priority. I told her that I couldn't bus her tables unless she pre-bussed them, and only if there weren't restaurant tables I needed to bus. She was constantly telling me I needed to bus her tables, and I was lazy. Despite the fact that I had lifted over 300 tabs that night, she wasn't the priority. She didn't pre-bus any of her tables, and she was always on the back dock smoking. Once that night, A nice couple saw me working in the table behind them and politely asked if they could talk to their server so they could take their order. She had left them alone for 15 minutes while she was smoking on the back dock and flirting with one of the prep cooks. She scoffed when I interrupted her flirting. "Oh, I'm sorry, Karen. I'm sorry I interrupted your 6th flirting break today so you can do the thing you were hired to do." About 6:30 p.m. that night, the restaurant got flooded with people. 1 hour waits, and I had to push my ass to the limit. I was flipping tables despite absolutely zero of the servers pre-bussing. However, since the restaurant was the priority, I couldn't get to her tables at all. Finally, we got a dip. I could finally get to her 3 tables, and all of them aren't pre-bussed. So, I have to do the full bussing for her tables, despite they have been vacant for almost 45 minutes. After the first table, she follows me back to the second table and tells me I need to hurry and I'm garbage at my job, and I'm making her lose money. I tell her to leave me alone and don't reprimand me in the front of the house. It was embarrassing, with bar patrons looking over their shoulder, and I could see they honestly felt sorry for me. I was at the lowest point in my life at that point in time. I honestly felt like I was the worst human being in the world. Once she left, I stopped bussing for a second and sat down at the table for a second. I looked at the dirty half-full tab and I got up. The table wasn't finished, and I left my dirty tab on the seat. I went to the back end to go. It wasn't active, and this was before widespread internet. We got maybe 15 orders per night, so the managers had relegated to-go duties to the QA that serviced the rest of the restaurant. It was easily accessible for them, but it was also vacant at that point in time. Call-in to-go was a relatively new and novel concept. I put down my headset, turned it off, pulled out a to-go pad, and wrote a full note noting how this restaurant is going to go down the toilet unless the managers get balls and reprimand the staff for treating bussers like crap. I then left, without telling anyone. I was called on my cell phone about 5 minutes into my drive home, and the AM told me, "OP, you still have a shift." My response was, "No, I don't. I quit." Their response, "OP, you still have a shift." Again, my response is, "No, I fucking don't need to be disrespected like I have. I quit." She had the gall to repeat herself, "OP, you still have a shift." I hung up and turned off my phone. It turned out that I left just in time for the dinner rush. Saturdays we closed at midnight, so for those last 4 hours, it was hell in a handbasket. I was told that the AM prevented anyone from going home until 2 a.m. because the restaurant was basically a trash basket by the end. Wait times at 10 p.m. were capped because they were well over 2 hours. Hosts told me later on that she had to turn away 40 families that night because everything went to hell. Some people just left while waiting for a table. Orders were getting misplaced. This information made it up to corporate, and they had to call in a fixer team to figure out what happened. They wanted to call me, but I wasn't going to talk to them. There was some restructuring in the business. The manager got shifted to another position in the company. The AM that called on staff was let go. Karen rode up, relegated to the shit shifts, and eventually left. I didn't return for 2 months, but not as an employee, but a customer. I was told all this by one of the remaining AMs, the one that actually treated me like a human being, and he gave me all of my tip shares, which was nice. The next best part of this, the day after I left C, my best friend found an ad that a huge game maker was looking for QAs. We applied that day and the following week. I got interviewed and hired on the spot. He didn't make it. It was the beginning of my programming career. I advanced through that job, got over to automation programming, then got hired at other companies. Now, I'm a senior programmer for a sheriff's office with 14 years of programming experience.